I'll spend about 30 minutes talking to you about our approach to working with SaaS companies. And part of this also is somewhat of a personal story, a personal journey of mine, and kind of why I decided to join Google, Google Cloud in particular, and what really inspired me and made me understand that when you think about cloud computing and where it is today, right, market analysts and everybody will agree that we're really tapping into only about 5% of the market opportunity that's out there today, and that's across all the major cloud providers in the world. 5% of the opportunity is being tapped in today. 95% of it is still untapped, right? So it is absolutely day one as far as what is out there in the cloud space. Just a little bit of background on me before I get into this, so to give some of my stories and anecdotes a little bit more context. I was in sales for a majority of my career, actually. I'd say about half of my career I was in enterprise sales. I started off at a company called Visio that got bought by Microsoft, dragging and dropping software, WYSIWYG, all those kind of things, org charts, flow diagrams, etc. Spent some time at Red Hat. When back in the day when people didn't know how to pronounce Linux, was it Linux or was it Linux, or much less what open source was, and why would anybody pay for free software? It was an amazing time in around 2000. My sales friends used to complain to me all the time about how hard their jobs were. And I say, your jobs aren't that hard. I picked the one software product in the world to try and sell that's actually free. Right? So try and figure out if you can figure out how to sell free software, you can pretty much figure out how to sell anything. I spent some time at Microsoft. But then I joined a very small innovative software company which was founded by a bunch of ex-Red Hat senior executives and original engineers around this idea, and this is in 2005-ish or so, no, 2006-ish or so. They had a crazy idea that one of these days applications will be deployed in the self-contained, what we call virtual appliances, onto virtualized infrastructure. This is before para-virtualization really took off, before VMware went public, before Amazon EC2 was launched. Right? So it was really early days. But that led me to a very large, what became a very large infrastructure as a service cloud computing company based in Seattle, where I happen to live. So I was there. When I was there, I actually built and ran the technology partner team and ran that for 7 years. But part of the story today is going to be about those experiences, but also why I decided to make the change and why it was so compelling. And hopefully this will be motivational for you to really rethink about how you approach business, how you approach your products, how you position your products with customers, and ultimately how do you become more successful when you're tapping into the cloud space itself. So one of the first things that really I think is interesting when you look at the evolution of the computing industry, right? Like if you go all the way back to vacuum tubes and mainframes and all that, we've always had these major shifts in technology that, ushered in new winners and new big players and new vendors, etc. Everything from mainframes onto distributed risk Unix-based systems, then onto distributed Intel commodity-based infrastructure that ran Windows and Linux, etc. Then to virtualization, then to SaaS, then of course to cloud, etc. And along that journey, you can follow that and you see the commonalities. Now, one of the things, if you look and you observe, as far as the wave of cloud computing, the first wave was co-locations, right? Where people used to literally have server closets and servers under their desks and things like that, and they managed their entire computing infrastructure themselves. Co-location came along, allowed people to achieve a certain level of economies of scale by allowing people to build major data centers and run things on their behalf. Well, what I would argue is the second wave of cloud computing, it was this ability to take and create virtual counterparts to physical objects. Right? So think about that, right? Virtual servers to physical servers, virtual disks to physical disks, virtual networking load balancing equipment to physical load balancing equipment. Massive, monumental, massively changed the industry as we know it today. It changed the buying behaviors because now you're doing digital products versus physical products. It changed distribution, to your point yesterday in your keynote, right? You no longer actually have to have people taking things from a factory, putting it on a truck, getting it down to the Best Buy and people buying it. Distribution change, which changed the relationship between supplier and consumer. It turned what used to be fixed CapEx types of investments into utility-based consumption. Massive transformation. However, again, think about it. Making virtual counterparts of physical objects. But what didn't change at all was the way applications are designed, which ultimately is what will change business. The whole concept of lift and shift, right, personifies this. where you take a multi-tiered legacy application from a physical infrastructure and you lift it and you shift it over to a digital one, right? The design is still the same, right? Still multi-tiered. You're still working with databases, separate databases, app servers, web servers, and things like that. Again, not a bad thing, but again, not absolutely transformational. The third wave, which is kind of where we are emerging, where we're in today, and we're only accelerating, is the notion of changing the way applications are designed, and more importantly, how DevOps works and how you actually administer machines. Right, so Google actually about 10 years ago realized that, we actually had our own mini cloud with inside of Google. Google realized, like, look, we cannot scale and operate at the rate in which we need if we continue down that traditional paradigm of digital equivalents to physical products. So Google 10 years ago really started to get into containers, serverless infrastructure, serverless computing, and investing heavily into things like machine learning, AI, and all those kinds of things we'll talk about. So it's this third wave where I believe Google is well positioned to help any company out there who's building any kind of software or technology product to think about how that application, that product is designed for the future by basically, and therefore modernizing your business. So before I get into some of the details and some of the more details about how we do this, I do believe that principles matter. Right, so when I talk about principles, we actually set up these principles probably about 3 years ago as far as what we think about and what we believe is important when we partner with our technology companies who are our technology partners. I'll go through this pretty quickly, but I think it's important because it is a differentiator for us. One is openness. I think undoubtedly Google is the most open cloud company or company in the technology company in the world when it comes to open source and contribution to open source. If you think about a number of technologies that have actually that companies were built off of, changed the way applications are designed, changed the way people access data, so things like MapReduce, things like Kubernetes, things like TensorFlow, etc., all came from Google. And then we believe that actually that technology is better in the hands of developers, in the hands of our partners, in the hands of our customers, versus being locked inside of the four walls of Google. We want that technology out there so people can actually iterate on it, benefit from it, build businesses off of it, and then ultimately we all reap the benefits of that. So that's openness. Transparency is one that as any company gets very large and you have a large ecosystem, you have to understand that eventually there's going to be encroachment into other people's spaces. It's inevitable. I mean, this has played itself out over platform evolution since the beginning of computing technology, right? Where ultimately, the large platform provider will encroach upon a space. Now, again, it's somewhat inevitable. However, the major difference is how transparent that cloud or infrastructure provider is. If we can give you guidance as far as where we're going, and more importantly, collaborate with you on our plans, you should never be taken by surprise. One of the quotes that one of my partners at my previous company would always come and talk to me about was, working with you is like dancing under the feet of an elephant. And I don't know the dance card, right? And it's frightening. It is absolutely terrifying for companies who are building technologies and they're dependent upon your platform. It's absolutely terrifying. So if we can be more transparent, we help our partners be more successful, and we help them avoid being stepped on. That's that one. Innovation, I'll get into this a lot more here in the next couple of slides, but again, it's this concept of, when I look at what Google does, I mean, Google really is really good at invention. We're really good at computer science. We're really good at coming up with new ways of solving problems that nobody else has, and then allowing people to take those innovations and impact their own businesses. Shared success. So my team actually at Google, in Google Cloud, is responsible for building programs for technology partners, both technical enablement programs as well as business enablement programs. One of the philosophies I want to bring to the company is, look, this is the concept of shared success, right? We look at our technology partners as true partners, right? Some others look at the technology partners as customers first, and then possibly a partner if it's convenient, right? We want to change that. We want to make sure that our focus is on our partners' success, and if our partners are successful, we will then indirectly become successful based off of them growing and thriving in their business. And then finally, fairness, right? This is akin to the transparency one, right? Where we're designing programs to make sure that, like, if we have first-party product produced by Google and we have third-party product produced by a partner, that our sales teams should, in theory, be neutral, right? It's what the customer wants to buy. We don't necessarily want to force some sort of artificial competition between what is a Google product versus a partner's product. It ultimately should be what is the best product for the customer, and then ultimately it would indirectly benefit our business if a customer chooses to adopt it. So those are the principles I just want you to keep in mind as we walk through some of this and when you think about Google Cloud just in general. Okay, so next one, the speed matters. So I promise I'm not going to get too technical. I told the planners, I told Sunir, like, I can't actually get that too technical. If I get a couple, remember I started in sales. If I get a couple of layers deep, then I'm way over my skis. But there are a couple concepts and notions I actually want to walk you guys through. So one is the network matters, right? So you've probably heard about this, though, where Google actually has by far the world's largest dedicated fiber-based network on the planet, to a massive scale, and I'll show you some stats here in the next slide. But the reason why I think that this is important is that, and here's one of the stories. When I told my mother that I live in Seattle, of course, right, that I was leaving a large Seattle-based cloud company to go work for Google, the first thing she asked me was like, "What, really? Like, you were 7 years over here at this other company. Why are you going to Google? Like, all I know about Google is I just search for things and I can get results back. Like, what are you going to do at Google?" And I kind of explained to her that, like, look, they're in the cloud space as well, but they have some major differentiators. And my mom's like, "Well, what are you talking about?" I was like, "Well, look, let me kind of put this in an analogy that, my mother would understand, which is, if you think about what the other large cloud company in the Northwest does as their primary business is really being able to, and they're masters at this, so I'm not to take anything away, they're masters at distribution of physical product, right? So think about it, they invest billions and billions and billions of dollars every year into optimizing efficiencies in their warehouses. Because if you can actually reduce picking time of a product that a customer purchased by a second, right, just a second, and you multiply that by 10 billion, right, those are massive cost savings. So they invest billions of dollars in those efficiencies. The ability for a picker to pick a product, put it in a box, package the box, put the label on it, get the box into a truck, and get the truck out the door. Billions of dollars. But here's the thing. Once that truck leaves the door or leaves the loading dock, it's on public infrastructure. So no matter how efficient you are in the actual warehouse, once your metaphorical distribution of physical product now is on the public infrastructure, it's out of your hands, right? You are no longer in control. There are thousands of people out there, many of them terrible drivers. There is weather conditions. There's all kinds of stuff that is just fundamentally outside of your control. So I was explaining, it's like, well, look, we own our own network. So what does that mean? That means that when our customers are using Google Cloud, they are only at the very end, right, when we have to traverse the public infrastructure, and typically it's in the same city, if not the same zip code of where the end customer is located. So instead of having to traverse public infrastructure all the way around, which again is outside of your hands, or it's outside of the provider's hands, and also you have all kinds of people out there on those networks, right? We actually provide a much safer and faster way of doing digital distribution. Right? So when you think about that, that is a massive differentiator when it comes to security, when it comes to scale, and when it comes to speed. So in speed today, time is one of these new currencies. I talk about this all the time. There's two types of currencies that have evolved in the last 5-10 years or so. It's time and data. Right? These are the new modern day currencies because time is money. The age-old question, well, time is money. It absolutely is. If you can actually process things 30 times faster than you could 2 years ago, you're going to make more money. So network matters. And this is the diagram of, again, like the virtual network of infrastructure highways that we have. We have, again, the largest privately held, fully owned network in the world. Third parties estimate that about 25% of the world's internet traffic traverses over Google's network on any given day, We have hundreds of thousands of miles of our own fiber optic cables. We have hundreds of points of presence and thousands of actually caching sites around the world. By far the largest global infrastructure when it comes from a network standpoint. So when you're thinking about it, it does matter. Because most businesses today, because of the internet, can instantly become global companies. You don't have to have the physical distribution of days of old. You can instantly reach customers around the world. So think about that. So global matters, which leads me to my next one. So global matters, right? You are starting companies. You are trying to sell your product to as many people who want to buy your product as possible. Don't stay in your city. Don't stay in your country. Don't stay in your continent. Sell to as many people as you possibly can, because people around the world have the same problems. Now, so when I talk about global matters, I'll give you one example. Cloud Spanner. So when I was doing my research to figure out, like, was I going to make the transition, I actually searched for some papers, and this was not a public service yet. But Spanner is the only enterprise, globally distributed, strongly consistent database service built for the cloud, especially, but combines the benefits of rational database structure with relational database structure with non-relational horizontal scale. So I'll explain what that means. But when I was researching, I found this article, and this is like fall of or late summer 2015, I believe. And I read this article, and I was like, this can't be. This is science fiction. Right? So if you think about relational databases, right? So traditional databases and any kind of architectural diagram you see is kind of that cylinder thing, right? And they're these kind of isolated data stores, right? And billions of dollars have been spent in trying to figure out how do you solve data redundancy across multiple databases, right? Failover, this, that, and the other, like all these kinds of different techniques. But the fundamental issue is you'll never get it down to be completely synchronous. Again, my mother. Mom, you have a filing cabinet at home, right? She's like, yes, we have a filing cabinet. They actually have filing cabinets at home, right? So, okay, great. Now let's just say you wanted to have a copy of all the files in that filing cabinet for redundancy's sake. She's like, okay, great. So you put another filing cabinet next to it. She's like, yes, okay. Now imagine the amount of time it's going to require you to copy every single file from that one and make a copy of it and put it in that one. And every time you make a change to one of the files, you have to do it and copy it over again. She's like, yeah, that would be very, very difficult. And I say, okay, well then imagine you want to solve the house burning down problem. So imagine your second filing cabinet is across the country. Wow, that's really a hard problem to solve, right? But this is the nature of trying to get synchronized databases. So what Google did, and this absolutely blew my mind, what Google did is they actually created a globally, strongly consistent relational database. Before I read that, I was like, that's absolutely impossible to do. But they solved the problem. Google needed to solve the problem because of the ads business. Google needed to figure out if a bid for certain advertising real estate was coming in from Mumbai, India, at the same time, or close to the same time, as that was coming in from, say, New York. Their system needed to be able to understand which one came in first, right? And you cannot do that without a system like this. So part of the way that Google solved this problem, which again leads into the realm of science fiction, part of the way Google solved this problem is by implementing GPS receivers, and atomic clocks in every single data center, right? Because there is a whole speed of light thing, right? And light is pretty fast. But over enough transitions and enough traversing, you do start to see degradation in synchronization. The way you solve that is through, apparently, atomic clocks and GPS systems to make sure you're keeping data synchronized. So when you think about that, like, before Cloud Spanner, you always had data silos, this whole concept of filing cabinet A and filing cabinet B, and these could be across the world, right? And like, and how do you keep these things synchronized? To today, with Cloud Spanner, and we are the only provider in the world who has this, like, who else has the wherewithal to equip their data centers with atomic clocks and GPS devices to create a globally synchronized relational database? Now, so think about the application of this. Like I mentioned, global matters, right? If you build a product for supply chain management, it's very important for you to understand exactly what your inventory looks like, or what your processing capability looks like, or your employee data, or whatever it is across the world at any given time. You want, if you're running retail, right, and you want to know exactly how much your capacity count is in New York as well as it is in Tokyo at that very second, you're able to do that now. All right, so modern applications are going to be built with this kind of technology built into it. Things that were absolutely fundamentally impossible to do before is possible now. Right, so when we're working with our SaaS partners, right, we are building ways and programs to help our SaaS partners embed technologies like this, because this becomes a differentiator for you in the market. And of course, a couple of examples. We announced a big partnership with Marketo last year. Right, but they actually are one of these ones. When they looked around, they're like, "What?" They do this big, massive marketing platform. They're like, "We always struggled with global synchronization. We always struggled trying to figure out how do we actually reduce latency for our customers worldwide." Cloud Spanner was the one thing one of the things that they looked at. It was like, "Oh my God, that's it." Again, it's like you don't even know to think about it, right, until you know it's there. Right, so Cloud Spanner, something just to think about as far as how Google is approaching the world differently. Next one is intelligence matters. And I don't know, it's just a little anecdote about myself. Whenever I'm typing, and I don't know what this says about me, I can never spell intelligence correctly the first time. So thank goodness there's spell check. But anyway, intelligence matters. Now, of course, the next slide you'll see that there's what type of intelligence, but I'm going to talk about there is, of course, AI, artificial intelligence. Before I get there, though, I want to talk to you about human intelligence. Right? Another quote that a lot of people say is, look, there's no compression algorithm for experience. Right? You just can't. You cannot just jump into something you cannot take on a task that some other entity has been doing, spending millions of man hours on. You can't simply jump in there and automatically figure out and be as good at it as they are. Right? So when intelligence matters, we're designing programs also to help our partners take the best and learn from the best of Google from an operational efficiency standpoint and operational design standpoint. How many of you are familiar with the concept of SRE, Site Reliability Engineering? It was a design kind of and support principle, or that was designed by Google to make sure that for Google products to achieve the level of reliability our customers expect, we had to have a very good way, a very elegant way to hold developers accountable, with support people, and to make sure that there is a strong tie between the people who develop the code and the people who are expected to support the code. That's called SRE, which is Site Reliability Engineering. There's books out there for people have written about SRE. CRE is something that we have developed recently to externalize that concept to customers and partners. So we're developing a SaaS CRE program where our SaaS partners can sit down with our CRE experts. And what Google experts will do is sit down with you and help you go through a workshop to understand several things. One is, what is your SLIs? Meaning, what are your service level indicators? How do you know if your application is performing at the level in which you want it to? And then what are your SLOs, service level of objectives? Right? So how many nines are you looking for, et cetera? And we actually work with our SaaS partners and look at your application, inspect how you actually operationalize that, and then we'll say, okay, well, great, well, fantastic. If your SLO really is 4 nines or 5 nines, say it's 4 nines, okay, fine. But based off of this, we think you can easily achieve 3 nines. If you do these 4 or 5 things, you can easily confidently say you can get to 5 nines. Right? So this is Google allowing our partners to get immersed with Google people to help improve your operations. Now, AI, of course, is AI and ML and deep learning, and all those are probably at the forefront of everybody's mind today in the technology industry. Right? But this is a non-trivial thing. This is something that people really, really, really need to think about, because this is going to shape the world of modern technology and modern enterprise business applications. Right? So Google, standard thing, we've been at it longest. We probably have the richest diversity of machine learning and AI services that we make publicly available today. Right? And of course, we've been using and embedding it in all Google products. And if depending on what kind of Google products you use, hopefully you're starting to see the impact of those. But here's another story. one of the reasons why I also wanted to come over, and this ties back to the original one, my original concept of the evolution of cloud. The thing that always kind of blows my mind is that if you look at traditional enterprise software today, traditional enterprise software is still set up to be, for the most part, be statically configured applications. Right, so ERP systems or business process management systems or back office financial systems, right, where the function of the software really is to process a transaction, right? I'm generalizing here, but deal with me, right? Where it starts here, it goes through these steps, and it ends here. But the crazy thing is the 1 millionth processing of that transaction is done in the exact same manner as the first one, right? Like, you can tune it a little bit, but fundamentally, it goes through the same steps. And you get faster by putting in faster CPUs and improving your network and all that, but the application itself still functions exactly the same. Right? With technology exists today, that should not be the case. Right? Like, business applications should become smarter. Right? It should understand, based off of the first transaction, okay, what's occurring? When the second one goes through, it says, okay, what are the similarities? Right? When the third one goes through, it's okay, this is similar to the first, or maybe it's similar to the second. Right? But the point being is, every time a transaction goes through, it should become incrementally better than the first. Incrementally better meaning it should be faster, it should be more efficient as far as utilization of resources, it should be more accurate, and it should be more secure every single time. So by the time you get to the millionth transaction being processed through that enterprise application suite, it is exponentially better than the first. But that still today has not yet permeated out there into the world of traditional enterprise software. That is one of a personal goal of mine to try and solve, is how do we get things like machine learning embedded into the next generation business applications that are going to change the way people manage their business. And this is how you can be competitive. This is how you displace some of the incumbents in the market. You fundamentally make the software better, more scalable, faster, smarter, more intelligent, more predictable, and solving your customers' problems in ways that the incumbents cannot. Right? So Twilio is the example here. Right? So Twilio, based in San Francisco. Right? Like this one is where they use the speech API, right, to help improve their support process. Right? Like, if you're able to actually do translation of voice into text and then put machine learning models against that, you can do all kinds of things around sentiment analysis. Based off the word choice that a customer is using, you can actually help the support technician understand, is this person agitated? Is this person pleased? Right? Is this person frustrated? Right? You can actually start to then fine-tune your support systems as well to make sure that your support engineers are as prepared and as equipped as possible to deal with whatever customer's coming in. But this is just one example. Think about the use of the vision APIs. Think about the use of natural language. All these kinds of things that we're talking about should be commonplace and will be commonplace in traditional business applications. Not just modern, really cool, innovative companies like Twilio. It will become commonplace in any type of enterprise business application. So with that, your cloud partner matters. Right? We would love to be your cloud partner of choice. Right? Leverage the investments that Google is making into not just our infrastructure, our networks, et cetera, our people, our inventions, all that. Leverage also Google's security, best practices in the world, access to innovation, again, better value, pricing and all that kind of stuff. And then again, the commitment to open standards. So hopefully that was it can give you a little bit of glimpse inside of Google Cloud that maybe you didn't have before, and hopefully get to know me a little bit better. But ultimately, look, let's build smarter products. That's what we want to do. That's how you compete and you win. And if you're doing with Google, we win along with you, not in spite of you. All right? Oh, shameless plug, Google Cloud Next coming up here in San Francisco. If you haven't, you feel free to come check it out. It should be actually a fairly significantly large event this year as well. We'd love to see all of you there. And thank you very much.
So I was listening to when you were talking about the global database thing, and as a computer scientist and physics background as well, I was going, yeah, but speed of light, and then you tell me you're bending causality with your GPS. servers, atomic clocks. Like yesterday, listening to Microsoft was listening to NASA build a space rocket, and listening to Google today is talking about time machine bending AI robots from outer space. How does a typical person, we're business people,
Yep.
Get on board your crazy sci-fi train and get up to speed? I guess hyperloops, crazy sci-fi hyperloops, and get on board, up to speed, because there's a lot of stuff to take in.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
no,
how they best figure it out?
Yeah, absolutely. So the interface between Google Cloud and our partners is no different than, and this is something that we strive to actually build consistency around, right? So how you interface with us should not be futuristic. It shouldn't be a mystery, right? We have a team of dedicated and committed partner managers that we can connect you with. We have a team of experts who can help you through the application onboarding process. Like, even though we're talking here about a lot of future state things, which are reality today, getting started with us is fairly easy. Every technology that I talked about here earlier today is actually made and exposed to as an API. Now, this is probably more for the product, the product or vice president of products within inside of your company, right? But incorporating those technologies into products that you build is quite simple, right? It's as simple as consuming any type of internet-based cloud service today. It's just that the benefits you get out the back end are much greater, right? And then we do have, of course, all the training materials, all the information that you need to get up and running fairly quickly. But yeah, interfacing with us is, I would like to say, hopefully easier than it is to interface with traditional large corporations who have big partner programs.
And one more question for me before I open to the group. So yesterday, Clayton Mask from Infusionsoft talked really well about being partner-centric. And Google has been a part of this organization for years and a founding board member. And we've seen the development of how you've been working with partners. You mentioned that you're also partner-centric. What does that mean for you? Like, how does that actually change the way you go work with customers, partners, and go to business?
Yeah, so when it comes down to, I mean, not to get too into the weeds, but when it comes down to doing, so from my standpoint, when it comes down to doing program design, so business programs, so things that would basically be investments that we would make into partners, right, or benefits that we provide partners. Being partner-centric means that we look at it from the standpoint of how is this going to help your business grow, not how is this going to help drive more consumption of our services. Right, so it is a different mindset when you're looking at this, whether or not you fundamentally are looking to help your partner's business be successful versus helping your partners become a driver of your revenue. Right, and I'm not sure if that's clear, but right. So what I'm trying to articulate here is that when we design programs, it is about how we reinvest back into you, how we give you the tools that you need to be successful. How do we make sure that you are building a healthy business? And if you're healthy, then ultimately it'll drive utilization of our platform. I think non-partner-centric companies are looking at it the opposite way, which is great, I got a whole bunch of people now that are going to just drive utilization to my platform, right? And I'll try and give them some help to do it, but ultimately, if they pay the bills, we're happy.
Awesome. Questions from the audience? I'll get you and then you next.
Hi, I'm John. I'm the
John.
CEO of a SaaS-based cloud ERP company that I could actually affirm that everything you're saying is true because we are in the process of moving part of our business over to the Google Cloud Platform right now. We use Kubernetes, Helm, Docker, Orca, Spinnaker. We're using all the the new tools that you guys are doing to do all this.
Fantastic.
But one of the things I want to ask was about Cloud Spanner, about the database. How are you accounting for regulatory issues like GDPR in Europe, some of the new the Cloud Active in the US? If you're making a database that exists across space and time and is synchronized everywhere, what about the regulators who actively don't want you to do that?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and look, this is a very sensitive topic, so I'm not gonna make up something here that will set you in the wrong direction. What I will say is, we obviously do follow, all the regulations, the changing regulations across the world. We are very conscientious about them. When we are looking at either helping you with your application design or utilization of our products, we keep those things in mind, and we can help you architect around them. Now, with that said, I know it's not probably a satisfactory answer, but I think that's better than me giving you an answer that could potentially be incorrect.
Yes, I'm Steve Roper with Full Contact, And I suspect that there are probably a fair number of people in the audience whose platforms or whose services run on platforms other than Google Cloud. So can you provide any guidance on how we might engage with you folks and potentially identify points of insertion other than wholesale moving our service from some competitive cloud platform to yours?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, in wholesale, kind of rip and replace is difficult. So there's many ways to do that, actually. You can leverage our ML and AI services, APIs, even if, for example, the compute and all those types of things might be existing in a different environment, right? As long as you actually are able to get your data over to or apply a TensorFlow model onto your data there, you can start to take smaller bites of the Google environment. Another way that people are doing it actually is, as you look at your business, assuming that it's not static, hopefully it's growing, right? That what you'll do is future workloads, right, or future products, you would then start to move over to a different platform. Hopefully it's ours, or it could be somebody else's, right? And that way, over time, you gain proficiency, you gain understanding, you gain expertise on the Google Cloud Platform. And then when a major compelling event occurs, like either A, you have to do a massive patch or upgrade to a particular system, that becomes an opportunity where you could say, okay, great, now that I've actually developed expertise here, maybe I should think about moving this particular workload over to the cloud as well, right? So I do think there's ways that you can, there are ways in which you can do it in bite-sized components. There's ways that you can simply just access our APIs from another environment. We also, when I talk about openness, we embrace this concept of open hybrid cloud more than anybody else does, because we do believe the reality is people are going to have things in multiple environments, right? So we're developing tooling to make sure that people can actually access the best of Google, no matter where your particular infrastructure might be distributed. So,
We have time for one more question.
Hey, Brian. Todd Carter, how are you?
oh my.
How you been? Actually, I caught up with Matt Tavis last week at the Google Cloud up in Seattle boot camp.
I was wondering, that has some guy there looks familiar.
Hey, a question for you. So I've been heavily involved in the cloud brokerage technology providers. I saw that Google acquired Orbitera in 2016, so a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
From the SaaS perspective of the vendors in the market here, what's Orbitera going to bring to us? Is that what you were alluding to a second ago about using that technology stack to bridge these different multiple cloud platforms, or how would we be able to help take advantage of that?
A good question, Todd, and great lead-in, actually. So Orbitera is a cloud commerce technology company that Google acquired probably about almost 2 years ago, right? So the whole idea about Orbitera is making it easy for people to actually sell basically cloud services from multiple providers, right? Packaging those things up and actually selling them as bundled offerings in the market. So Orbitera, one of the things we're doing is we're actually embedding Orbitera into Launcher, which is our marketplace, right, for the commerce engine part of it. Orbitera can also be used as a white label marketplace. So for example, if you actually want to establish a marketplace for your own business, right, where you might have a bunch of partners who have virtual products or complementary products to your own, but you don't want to have to go through the hassle of building out your own marketplace platform, your own commerce engine, your own inventory management system, SKU management system, all those kinds of things. Orbitera is that platform, right? So I did actually have a slide on it, but I had removed it for the interest of time. But Orbitera is a platform for people to create white label marketplaces, right? That then again leverages the best of the back end of Google, but at the same time, it allows you to get a marketplace, your own marketplace out there as quickly as possible. But great question, Todd. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you so much.